but that just because a player has a quick bat speed or can produce high exit velocity off of a tee, it does not mean that they're going to be a good hitter. It's simply one part of the equation, and it's certainly something that we want to try to improve. We did find that very few players below our average, with the exception of those couple I talked about in the 62, 63, 64 range, but very few players below our average bat speed had very productive years.
Welcome to another episode of the Cornerstone Coaching Academy podcast, where you will get expert, practical baseball coaching advice you can take directly to your next practice. Let's get started. Here's your host, Coach Kyle Nelson.
All right, coaches, welcome back to another episode of the Cornerstone Coaching Academy podcast. I'm your host, Coach Kyle Nelson. We have an outstanding show for you today, but first, I'd like to introduce you to a little bit about our podcast. I do want to welcome back those of you that are returning listeners. If you have liked what you've heard on our podcast, please head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. It's going to help other coaches find the show and help us spread the word about some of the great things we're doing for youth travel and high school coaches at Cornerstone. For those of you that are new listeners today, I want to say welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. This podcast is just a little bit different than many of the other great baseball coaching podcasts that are out there right now. Each week, I'm going to give you an in-depth analysis and information on one specific topic that you can take directly back to your practice, your team, or your program to make them better immediately. Each podcast will be about 15 to 20 minutes long, so you can listen during your morning workout while you're mowing the lawn or on your drive to work. We do have several other ways you can interact with the show. You can follow me on Twitter at Coach_K Nelson. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes and Stitcher, so each week's show is sent directly to your mobile device. You can explore our website and blog posts at cornerstonecoachingacademy.com and cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/blog. And for those of you who are really serious, you can join Cornerstone Elite, our premium membership, where I show you exactly how to implement all the great information in a team setting with a small and limited coaching staff. We have over 50 practice plans and growing that can be implemented with just 2 coaches. I explain all of our programming for hitters, infielders, pitchers, and all of our drills, and much, much more. To join today, you can go to cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/cornerstone-elite. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with today's show. The topic today is going to be how we used blast motion sensors with our team this year. I'll talk a little bit about what we measured, give you some of the numbers that we recorded, how well they seem to translate to in-game performance, and then talk about how we did our testing and then where we kind of go from here using this technology. I think over the next couple of episodes, we'll be taking a look at how we utilize technology, exactly what we did with it, how it benefited us, some of the things that went well and some of the things that went poorly. Also, because in our first year of really trying to integrate tech into our program, obviously we came across several shortfalls and several things that we misinterpreted, several things we didn't know and understand. And so I'd like to pass quite a bit of that on to you guys so that if you do decide to get into the technology with your baseball team, that you have hopefully a little bit of a smoother experience than we did. So for the show notes for today, you'll be able to go over to cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/176. Anything I talk about in the show, I'll leave over there for you so that you can access that, as well as some other of our podcast episodes that are going to be pertinent to this episode. So first, let's talk a little bit about Blast, what it is, how much it costs, that kind of thing. One of the nice things about it is I think it is probably one of the more financially accessible tools for players, for coaches, for families. We got 3 of ours. I think I paid $125 a piece for them. The going rate for them directly from Blast is $150, but if you join their email list, a lot of times they'll send you some discounts that you'll be able to use to get them cheaper. I think we got ours on Black Friday, so if you're looking to get some or one for your team or your player for next year, that would be a good time to check out and see if you can get a little bit of a discount on them. Like I said, they're really, really accessible. If I had a player, if I was a parent of a baseball player, My daughter just plays golf and does gymnastics, so she's not a softball or baseball player, but I would definitely make the $100 to $150 investment in a bat sensor, and use it in just about every situation that I could to kind of monitor and see how things are going, see how things are improving, that kind of thing. So what we did with it was we tested several times throughout the year. I'll talk a little bit first about some of the downfalls we came across in testing and some of the things that we had to kind of redo and take into consideration. And then I'll talk about some of the results that we saw. So first of all, when we did our testing, please realize that if you test in different environments, you're going to get totally different numbers for the exact same player. So if you test in an environment where, let's say you just test on a tee, then you test on front toss, then you test on game-like velocity, and then you test on live at-bats, what you're going to see is totally different from one to the next. Here's what we found happened in general as we moved closer and closer to actual game competition, and then I'll talk about where the numbers that we did, where they came from in this spectrum. So on the tee, what you'll see generally is the highest bat speed for the player. You will see probably also the highest attack angle and probably the lowest time to contact. So imagine that you're taking a player and you're testing them in 4 different environments. You're going to test them on tee, you're going to test them on front toss, you're going to test them in like a competitive BP round or a game velocity machine, and then live at-bats. As you move towards the live at-bats, what you'll see is you will see bat speed start to decrease. You will probably see attack angles start to decrease. You'll also see time to contact decrease. So that's one of the things that we noticed, was that as velocity got more game-like, and as we started to mix in the possibility of breaking pitches, players were trying to be shorter and quicker to the ball, creating a more downward bat path, but also getting a little bit quicker as well. But their bat speed was dropping considerably also. And so you kind of decide where you want to test what makes most sense for your program. Obviously, the thing that would make most sense is if you just said, okay, we're going to use these in live at-bats and just see how we do strictly in live at-bats. One of the reasons we do use them on tees is because we do like to help players get intent and develop intent to swing the bat quickly. Another reason we use them on tees is or short soft tosses, we want players to feel what an appropriate attack angle feels like. And so it's difficult to do those things at the full game speed right away. We want to kind of work our way towards that. The numbers that I'm going to give you today for our 3 metrics, we measured those in a competitive batting practice environment. So that was me throwing from about 35 or 40 feet and an equivalency of around 80 to 85 miles an hour, and then also mixing in breaking balls. Again, I wasn't throwing 80 to 85. The timing equivalent was about 80 to 85 miles an hour. And I'll go ahead and leave, actually. We have a chart that we use, and I'll leave that over at the show notes for you so you can kind of get an idea of how fast you need to throw from certain distances to approximate the timing of certain game velocities. So I'll leave that over at the show notes again, which you can find at cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/176. So let's take a look at some of the averages that we found. Our bat speed averages, and again, this was in, I kind of threw out the averages for the tee, and I threw out the averages for the soft toss, front toss. This was all against competitive batting practice. What we found, our average bat speed was around 65 miles an hour, and this is high school varsity. And the peak was 73, and the lowest on our team was actually around 55 miles an hour. One of the things that really surprised me from looking at this data was that we actually had a negative correlation between a batter's bat speed and their on-base plus slugging that they actually got throughout the year. That was a little bit shocking to me, but it started to make sense when I looked at some of the players and some of their weaknesses and strengths. And one of the things that it really pointed out to me was that it was simply that bat speed is simply one part of an equation of a good hitter, and that just because you can swing the bat quickly does not or fast does not necessarily mean that you are going to be a good hitter. In fact, some of our better hitters on the year had bat speeds around 62 to 64 miles an hour, and some of the players who were up around 70 didn't have as good a years offensively as players who were, say, in that 62, 63. Now, please don't misinterpret this to say that I would train players to have a slower bat speed. All I'm saying is that at the beginning of the year, I think I over-evaluated how important it was to have a good bat speed. Bat speed is always something we want to try to improve upon, but that just because a player has a quick bat speed or can produce high exit velocity off of a tee, it does not mean that they're going to be a good hitter. It's simply one part of the equation, and it's certainly something that we want to try to improve. We did find that very few players below our average, with the exception of those couple I talked about in the 62, 63, 64 range, but very few players below our average bat speed had very productive years. And if they did, it wasn't very much for power. They didn't hit for very much power. They were a little bit more of an on-base type player, singles, bunt hits, things like that. A lot of them underneath that level that had some success, had some speed, and very few of them hit for power. We did have two players, again, like I said, in that 62, 63 range who had great years, hit for a lot of power actually, and really were able to maximize the damage they did. And I'll talk a little bit more later on about why I think that is. So that was what we found with our bat speed. As far as attack angle goes, we found that our average attack angle was about 12.5 degrees. And we set a goal for our guys to have an attack angle between 5 and 15 degrees. Now, attack angle is different from launch angle. Launch angle is the ball coming off of the bat. The attack angle is the relationship of the bat path relative to the ground at impact. So if the bat's traveling perfectly level to the ground, that's going to be 0. If it's traveling up, it's going to be positive. If it's traveling down, it's going to be negative. We set a goal for our players to be between 5 and 15 degrees. I think that next year, when we set this, we'll probably set our goal to be between 0 and 15 degrees. We do want to have a slight up bat path, but we saw several of our players who had bat paths in the attack angles in the 0 to 5 range who had pretty successful years. Now, does that mean that they couldn't have optimized a little bit more with a little bit more of an uppercut? Perhaps. Those are things that I don't know yet, because you can't run parallel experiments with the same player and let them try let them have a flatter bat and a more steep bat in the same season. But I do think that as long as we're above 0 and below 15, we're in a zone where we're going to be matching up the plane of the pitch pretty well, and we're going to be able to do some damage on a line and do some damage in the air, as well as some of the ground balls that we hit then are also going to be hard ground balls, because we are in that around that 5 degree area. We're still going to hit hard ground balls, hard line drives, and then hard balls in the air also. Our minimum was -17, and our maximum was 27.7 degrees for an average on the test. The things that we found here, players below 0 had very little success. So we had a handful of players who had a negative attack angle. They really struggled to hit. They had a lot of strikeouts. They didn't put the ball in play very much, simply because they're not matching the plane of the ball. So the window they have to make contact was very, very small. Like I said, we did have some players in that 0 to 5 range who had some pretty good years. Our most successful range was in the 5 to 10 range. So that's where most of the players we had who had productive seasons, they were mostly in the 5 degree to 10 degree range or just slightly above it. One of our players who had probably one of our most productive offensive seasons was around 11. So that 5 to 11 was really kind of like our hot zone where most of our players were really productive. In the 11 to 15 degrees, we saw some good production in that area. And then anyone who was above 15 degrees really struggled to put the ball in play. When they did, they were top spinning a lot of balls or, hitting, top spin ground balls that weren't very hard or hitting lazy fly balls. So for us, we want to try to maximize in that 5 to 10 range. That's going to be our green zone from now on, where we want to try to get guys in that 5 to 10 range. Our yellow zone is going to be between 0 and 5, and then between 11 and 15 is what we'll go for. And then red is going to be anything negative or anything above 15 degrees. We just didn't see very much production from players this year who were in those areas. Attack angle was the one that most closely predicted the amount of success that a player was going to have. So just because a player had a good attack angle didn't mean that they were going to have a productive season, but that was the one that most closely predicted what was going to happen with them. And then I kind of gave you the good ranges there. Another thing that we had was our time to contact. We measured that as well. Some kind of surprising things that we found in the time to contact. Our team average was 0.15 seconds. So this is from the time that the player starts their swing until they make contact. Depth of contact is going to play a little bit of a role here. As they contact the ball farther out in front, the time to contact will be a little longer, and as they contact it back off their front foot, it'll be a little bit shorter. But we did get a big enough sample size through our testing that I think that we have a pretty good idea, and we're able to get some balls out in front, some balls middle, and some balls away to kind of find out where they were on average. What we found here was that our most productive seasons from players happened from the very top. One of our more productive hitters was that 0.13, and then in the 0.14 to 0.15 range. Only a couple of hitters who were over that 0.15 were able to have successful years. I think we had 2 or 3 guys who were able to stay in our lineup on a consistent basis who were over that 0.15 of time to contact. So this was one that was pretty important. Our maximums did go all the way up to 0.17. And so, those players who were in that 0.16 to 0.17 range really struggled to catch up to any kind of velocity. So if they faced a pitcher who was throwing a little bit harder, they really struggled to do that. And I think one of the reasons is because a quicker time to contact within reason allows a player to see the ball a little bit longer and make a decision a little bit later if they're able to get there quickly. But also kind of pairing that up with our attack angles, we still want to make sure we're able to pair that up quickly and have an appropriate attack angle and not just have a choppy swing and get to the ball as quickly as we can. All right, so with all that being said, what did I find? What were kind of the conclusions I was able to draw, or some of the things I noticed from this year? The players that had the most success were around average in all of the around or above average in all of the categories. They were not particularly below average, with the exception of a couple guys in our bat speed. They were not particularly below average in any of the areas. They were either right around that average or well above average in all 3 of those categories. And so it's not like we can just sit here and say, okay, we need to just improve bat speed with everyone. Because bat speed is just a small part of hitting. I'll leave a link in the show notes to our hitting pyramid and talk about that. You can go listen to that podcast. And it talks about what things we think and view are important to make quality high school and amateur hitters, and also to get guys ready for the next level for college and professional if that's an area they're going to go to. But you can go check that out on our website. And again, the show notes for today can be found at cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/176. Another thing that I noticed is that being well above average in one or two categories didn't necessarily mean that you were going to be able to take that into in-game production. So like we had several guys who were towards the top of the list in, say, time to contact or bat speed or, in that good zone for attack angle, but they still weren't able to translate that into the game. And I think that goes to show that, here we're measuring the swing, right? With Blast is measuring the swing. The swing is only a small part of what we do as hitters. It doesn't tell the entire story. And so if you're in a tryout situation or if you're trying to make decisions, in your lineup, realize that this is a part of the information, but the rest of it really is pitch selection and timing and, the movement patterns and things of that nature, having a good approach. And so what we're seeing with the swing here is that it's only a small part of creating a successful hitter at the high school amateur level. So that was a little bit about what we did with Blast this year. Going forward, I think what we're going to be doing, we do use it. We are going to use it for improving bat speed for sure. And we have several guys who need to work on attack angles also. And so when a player's on a Blast sensor, we're going to have 3 of them with 3 iPads set up. And they'll be able to go to different stations. And some of them might be a T station where we just simply say, hey, today we're going to try to see how high we can get our bat speed off a tee. And I think that is a valuable exercise to do. I know the patterns are going to be a little bit different than the game, but just simply getting the ability to swing the bat faster is going to help them in the game. And then, in the next station, it might be a front toss station where they're working on having a good attack angle. And again, even though it's not against a high velocity machine or a mix-up pitch, I do think there's some high value in that because it gets them to feel what that attack angle is like. And then when they get into a more pressure situation, they'll have something to go back on because they've felt what 10 degrees feels like. And then we're also going to use them for a lot of our live at-bats. So players can see how well that they're translating what they're doing on the tee and what they're doing in their soft toss work, how well they're able to translate that into the game so they can hopefully repeat those movements that they were able to do on a tee and on soft toss situations. Going forward with testing, I think we're going to stick with the coach challenge batting practice as our testing model. We might also do one against high velocity machine and just kind of see where the numbers end up on those. But for me, I think it's difficult for us to do this throughout the year against live arms because we just don't have enough of them. And then if we do have guys who are throwing in practice, they're probably not throwing at velocities with stuff that's, as close to what they'll be seeing in game. So I think that for us, the coach challenge batting practice where, we're throwing with high velocity, where we're mixing up, I think that's probably going to be the best testing method for us going forward. And then also, again, against a high velocity machine. And for us, I'm thinking that'll be somewhere in the mid to upper 80s. We will see some players who throw around 90 or a little bit above. But, a high school pitcher who has a good fastball, who's going to go pitch in college, he's going to be throwing in that 84 to 87 range, maybe just a little bit harder. And so that'll be our high velocity testing. I think anything over that, and we put the players into panic mode, and we're not necessarily getting anything that's going to be useful or accurate out of it. So I hope that help you guys out a little bit with how we used blast sensors and how you can incorporate them into your your team. Or if you're a parent of a player or a player and you're interested in one, I would certainly consider purchasing one. It's about half the price of a bat and probably a heck of a lot more useful to you as you go forward. Just make sure that you separate out, and understand what types of swings you're taking and what the differences are going to be between tee, soft toss, game velocity, and then like a live at bat or a challenge batting practice situation. So thanks again for listening. You can find all of the show notes for today at cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/176. If you're interested in getting even more information from us, you can join Cornerstone Elite, which is our premium membership. Has access to over 50 of our chaos batting practice drills that help develop everything in our hitting pyramid. I do have the podcast to the hitting pyramid linked in today's show notes, so you can go there. You can go there and check out Cornerstone Elite. We do also put a free resource out from Cornerstone Elite each week. This week's free resource is our infielders throwing progressions and our infielders throwing sequences. To get that, you can go to cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/free, and you'll be able to see each week a different free resource from our Cornerstone Elite membership. Have a wonderful week. We'll be back next week with another episode, and never stop learning.
Thanks for listening to the Cornerstone Coaching Academy podcast. If you liked what you heard here and you're looking to take your team, your program, and your coaching career to the next level, there is no better resource than a Cornerstone Elite membership. Get everything you need to run an amateur team, including dozens of drills, games, practice plans, e-courses, and much more, right at your fingertips, wherever you have an internet connection. Check it out today at cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/cornerstone-elite. We will be back next week with another great episode on the Cornerstone Coaching Academy podcast.